Welcome to my Inchies video. Today I'm making a panel card out of Inchies, which are 1 by 1 inch squares of cardstock. I've kind of glued them in place onto a piece of acetate. I'm inking up my Sparkle Clear Tree stamp with Memories black dye ink. I like to use this ink because I'm going to be painting on my paper and it doesn't smudge. So I'm stamping left of center onto all 6 pieces. Now I've picked out a bullet type tip paintbrush, which is a little bit fatter than a detail brush. And I'm going to load up the brush with blue paint and water, and I'm going to do a light wash. And a wash means it's more water than paint. So I'm going to keep reloading with paint and water and paint my entire piece. Kind of fast forwarded and I continue painting. And actually I don't have to paint the very bottom of my panels because I'll be adding some paper down there in a little bit. But if you notice, I have areas of light and dark paint. Now I'm stamping my tree trunk onto a piece of green pattern paper, which is by Mind's Eye, or by My Mind's Eye. It's one of my favorite green papers. And rather than keeping the top of the paper just straight, I'm going to cut it in an arch to create kind of a grassy hill. And I'm working on my accessory pieces to my panel right now so I can give my watercolor a chance to dry. So now I'm going to stamp my little bird from a Sparkle Clear set onto a piece of basic gray. It's kind of a red flourish paper. And I'm sorry, it's kind of off to the side. You probably can't see it. And now I'm cutting my bird out with my Cutter Bee scissors, which are really fine detail scissors, which allow me to get into all the little tight corners. I'm cutting right on the line of the image. Now I'm going to distress the edges with Tim Holtz Distress Inks, and I've chosen Walnut Stain, and I'm using an Ink Essentials applicator. The applicator lets me get into all the little bends and grooves of the bird. I like to do this because it gives me a finished look on my papers instead of having a white edge. I'll also do the top of the grassy hill. I don't need to worry about the sides because I'll be cutting that off in a little bit. Now I'm going to let my paper rest and dry. Now I've chosen Faded Jeans Distress Ink, and I have an applicator with the color already on it. And I'm going to start applying the ink on the outside. Notice I'm swirling on the acetate first. Sorry that my camera's wobbling. I am using my regular digital camera so I can zoom up close so you guys can see what I'm doing. But I'm swirling the ink from the outside towards the center. And if you can notice how the Inchies are grabbing the ink in the centers, all the edges of the paper grab the ink first. Kind of gives a really cool window pane look. The reason why you want to swirl from the outside in is so that it doesn't leave marks. Now I've switched over to an antique linen, and it's kind of a light beige. I don't have to worry about the marks of the applicator as much with a lighter color ink. The antique beige is going to give me a distressed, warmer look than a vibrant blue. Okay, now I'm going to ink up my flourish with the same Faded Jeans ink that I used before, but it'll be darker now that it's coming straight off the stamp. Notice I have another stamp on the block. I've only inked the flourish. The other one works as a stabilizer so the block doesn't rock when I go to stamp. Now I'm adding drops of water to my background and I'm blotting them back up. What they're going to do is create little areas of dimension, a little bit lighter, so it's as I drop the water down and I blot it back up, it pulls the color of the distress inks back up. Once it's dry, it shows up much better than when it's wet. Now I'm going to add some glue stick to my grassy hill, and I'll apply it to the bottom of my card, or bottom of my panel, so it's ready for the next step. I'm not going to worry about it sticking to the acetate because it'll all pull up when I'm ready. Now the watercolor wheel comes with 24 colors, and they're really rich, creamy watercolors, but I feel they have like a little bit of acrylic to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up my same paintbrush with water, and I'm going to swirl around in the white. Make sure my little blots are dry first. But I'm going to swirl around in the white, I'm going to reload with water, and I'm going to create a puddle in the middle. I want this to be a lot of paint and a lot of water. Next I'm going to tap onto my piece, and I'm creating spatters of white. This gives great dimension. Now that that's dry, I'm going to go back and color my leaves with color pencils, and I'm using an olive green. If you don't happen to have olive green pencils, you can use other greens, grass green or Kelly green, and just mix it with a little bit of brown. Now I'll go back in with my Ink Essentials white opaque pen from Ranger and create some highlights on my leaves. And I'm going to pull off my pieces and distress the edges with walnut stain. I also have an applicator for each color that I use. And notice I'm using a blot type of motion rather than a pulling. This gives me a little thinner edge. Now I'm going to glue my pieces down to black cardstock, and I'll cut those out without leaving a border. This just gives them more stabilization. Now I'm using foam tape, and I use the type on a roll when I'm doing larger pieces. And I'm going to put my Inchies onto a white panel. And notice how I'm leaving a little bit of gap in between each. I've trimmed the white piece, and now I'm mounting that to a black piece. Just gives it a nice frame. I'll add my bird with a piece of foam tape and my button with a glue dot. And here's my finished card. I hope you try it. Thanks for joining me.